Redditors, what is the worst walk of shame you've had? How did it happen? One time when I was around 13, I was at a Bible study at a relative's house and I was super gassy. I felt a big gutbuster coming on and I decided the polite thing to do would be to excuse myself and go to the restroom and blow that foghorn. Well, I stood up and made it about 3 steps before I let out a quick pop and then proceeded to chainsaw fart my way across this quiet room with about 12-15 people reading the Bible. I stayed in the bathroom mortified until my aunt came and got me. Chainsaw fart. Very descriptive. After a wild night partying at my friend's dorm, I woke up at her place to the beanbag, carpet, and my clothing covered in vomit. I had to change clothes, gather everything in a trash bag, and carry it back to my dorm, which was a 15-minute walk away, hungover. And did I mention that my friends stayed with me the entire time, laughing at me and pointing? Man, those were the days. True friendship is letting a puking person crash at your place, giving them fresh clothes, and then laughing at them. Many years ago, I hooked up with a friend who lived downtown. I had parked my car on the street before going to the bar the night before. We had gotten pretty intoxicated that night, hence the hookup. We slept fairly late the next morning, both of us pretty hungover. I had entirely forgotten that there was an event that morning where they blocked off the streets, despite there being signs posted everywhere. So mid-morning I dodged my way through crowded streets to get back to where I parked my car, only to find it fenced in by temporary fences to block off the street for the kids' bike race that was about to start. My car was literally the only one left on the block. I asked a police officer when I could get it out, and was told I'd have to wait until after the race. So, there I sat on a bench on the sidewalk, visibly hungover, miserable, and surely ashamed, while a bunch of kids rode their bikes around downtown with their parents shooting me odd looks. Woke up on my prom date's parents' basement pool table, still wearing the top half of my tux, nothing below the waist. My date was asleep on the basement couch, jolted upright and bashed my head on the light fixture hanging above the pool table, cutting my forehead open. Could not find my underwear or socks. Walked home in snow and cold with a bleeding wound. Date's mom called my parents' house later that day, only to leave a message on the answering machine saying that she'd found my socks and underwear, and that she'd send them to school with my date. The message on the machine is brutal. Nothing beats waking up in the house of a 20-something guy who supposedly had his own place, but then him expecting you to join him at the breakfast table with his stern-looking parents. A friend of mine recently hooked up from a club. Issue is he is in his 40s. She was barely 21. They went back to her place, which just happened to be her parents' house. The best part, walking out the next day, and a conversation ensues that he is older than her parents by a few years. I temporarily lived in a hotel in a smallish town, 7,000, for construction work for about 6 months. It was Halloween on a weeknight and lots of the construction folks went out partying. A woman friend and I made impromptu togas out of my bedsheets before heading out on the town. I crashed at a hotel that night, overslept a little, and walked back to my hotel along the commuter highway at 8 AM in only a toga. Went on a first date with a girl from an online dating app. Things went well, making out in a small pub. I accidentally set fire to my shirt on a candle. Wasted, we didn't care. Ended up staying at hers. Had to walk to work through central London the next morning in a half-burnt shirt until I could find a clothing shop and buy a t-shirt. Had to walk to work through central London the next morning in a half-burnt shirt. It's central London. Weirder crap than that is seen every day. My husband and I have been married for 23 years and have 4 sons in their late teens. For as long as we've been married, my husband goes and gets me a glass of ice water after sex. It wasn't a problem before, but now the boys stay out later than we do. He tries to avoid them when he goes for the water because he feels like they know. Our house is small. There's no avoiding them. He calls his water run the walk of shame. I don't know if that counts, but it makes me laugh. He's very right. They know. Maybe not the walk of shame you are asking about, but a few years ago I accidentally shat myself at the very crowded Amsterdam sign. I had a very sudden bout gastro, with almost no warning. I had to do the walk of shame through the crowded streets of Amsterdam, in a crap-soaked pair of chambray short shorts. For future reference, falling in a canal is an option if it's warm enough. You can't exactly get any dirtier and people would be more understanding. I was going to a fancy dress party where you wear anything but clothes. So bags, boxes, wrapping paper, anything but clothes. I had work the next day so I thought I planned it out spectacularly. I took clothes for the next day into work because I knew I'd be staying at one of my many friends' houses where I could then get into work. Put the suit on and away with the day. I ended up getting with this girl who was staying in the Travelodge in the middle of town, right next to my workplace. Wow, how convenient and amazing this was. Anyway, skip to the morning where I look to the floor and all that I have is a short pair of shorts and some trainers next to a pile of black bin bags. She was tiny so there was no chance I was fitting in her clothes to get into work. I phoned my friend to tell him what had happened and asked if he could bring my clothes out. I told him I'd meet him down the side of the building by the bins. Clearly I was still S-face because I strolled out of the front of the Travelodge in my shorts, walked round the corner and sort of squatted behind the bins while I waited for my friend. This wasn't a dead end though. What I didn't realize was this was a shortcut from the train station through onto the main street, so there were hundreds of people walking through, many of who were working in the same building as me. Eventually he turned up. I threw my shirt and trousers on, went into work, cleaned up and carried on with my day. I think more than half of the people on my floor probably saw me and it was only awkward because no one would ever ask or say anything. It was only awkward because no one would ever ask or say anything. Must be British LOL. I tried to shoot a piece of rubbish into the bin and missed, so the teacher stopped the entire class and made me go put it in. Grabs trash, runs back to desk. Kobe. Not many worse feelings than waking up in someone else's hostel room, sleeping 10, stark naked on a bottom bunk with no covers over you, then trying to find your underwear amongst about 5 people's piles of clothes. OMG, you're that person at the hostel. P. One of my best friends and I went to a club without the knowledge that a well-known actor from a famous Australian TV show was making an appearance. We didn't understand all the commotion in the club until we saw a poster advertising his appearance. We never heard of the bloke beforehand because both of us don't watch the show. Anyway, he came up to us and sparked a conversation. And I whispered to my friend, if you don't go home with him I will be very disappointed in you. She accepts his offer to go back to his hotel, but we don't know this bloke. He could be dangerous. I wanted my friend to enjoy her night, so I went over too just in case anything happened. So while my friend is having the time of her life in the bedroom, I passed out on the lounge. I'll admit I wasn't the best bodyguard. Hungover AF, I wake up in the early hours of the morning and they're both still in the room. I call my other good friend and ask her to pick us up from so and so hotel in the city. My makeup is a mess. My hair is knotty and looks like sex hair. I'm still in my town outfit, which is tight AF, and I slip on the complimentary hotel slippers. They're better for my exit than my bulky heels, right? So I did absolutely nothing but sleep and I walked through that whole hotel and out on the street. I could feel eyes on me with the obvious thoughts that I had a one night stand. If only they knew I was just trying to be a good friend. If only they knew I was just trying to be a good friend. It's okay. We know you're real Reddit friends. I, M32, was in a play during an incredibly hot summer in London when I was 22, and the director's daughter was 31 and in charge of the lighting. She was visiting for 6 months after finishing her BA in Australia, living at home with her father and his boyfriend in London. We hit it off straight away, and after the first lighting rehearsal we went for a drink and then went back to her father's house. But she was on edge the whole time about being caught. We couldn't go to mine as I had family staying, and we were both incredibly frisky, so we went to a local park. We found a hidden place off the path in the dark and spent the rest of the night having al fresco sex, falling asleep wrapped around each other on a bed of our clothes around dawn. When we woke up in daylight, it was very clear we weren't half as well hidden from the path as we'd thought in the dark, with just some ferns on top of a slight rise between us and the path. So we quickly got dressed and holding hands walked off in search of breakfast. We were walking towards these two 14-15-year-old girls on the path who were clearly coming back after walking their dog, and as they got closer to us they both started blushing and laughing behind their hands. They'd quite clearly seen all of us on their way in on the path as we slept. I've never been so confused about whether to laugh or be ashamed or worry about being reported for something, and walking toward them was excruciating and felt like it lasted for hours. I put my arm around so she didn't feel alone and styled it out, but man that was awkward. A surprise encore. Was at a university residence partying, went back to a girl's room, ended up vomiting, went to the laundry room at the end of the hall and threw my vomit-soaked wool sweater in the washer then dryer, passed out sitting on the dryer and fell sideways banging my head on the shelf beside, woke up with blood on my face and pants, a shrunked, vomit-stained sweater, was unsure how to exit the building and walked back to my parents' house, took an hour through a busy enough area. Thank God they just put me to bed without asking questions. Used to work at a leisure center where we hosted kids parties with a bouncy castle. We weren't licensed to have it outside, so we used to have it in one of the function rooms, and whilst setting it up we were asked to make sure no adults go on it because the ceiling was too low and they'd hit their heads. Anyway, one time my grandma hosted her birthday party there and all the kids are on the bouncy castle. I'd already told my aunts and uncles that they aren't allowed on. Then in a fit of what I can only assume is temporary insanity, the inner child in me takes over and I launch myself onto the bouncy castle and in one bounce I fly up and crack my head open on the ceiling. I'm wearing a white shirt and blood is flowing from my open head wound onto it. All the kids are screaming and crying. My workmates have to come in and mop up all the blood whilst I'm paraded past them on my way to A&E. So yeah, no adults on the bouncy castle, guys. Originally thought you posted in the wrong thread but instead you became my favorite story. Mine was a walk, bus, train, walk of shame, with the guy in question. So I was at a hostel overseas at the hostel bar. I ended up with a guy who says he works there and can probably get us a private room since I'm in the 8-person dorm upstairs and not too keen to utilize my bottom bunk. He goes to the front desk but his drunken butt has no luck talking the night staff into that, so off we head to his place. Not a taxi or anything but a train ride and some walking. That's fine. We are getting close on the train and the trip flies by. Next morning I wake up with a fair amount of regret because he was not worth the trip. I just want to get out of there, but I realize that I'm somewhere in the outer suburbs of Vancouver but I have no idea where and no clue how to get back to my hostel. Well, it turns out that's okay because the guy has a shift and has to go back into the hostel too. So we walk out the house and stop for some change and a snack at a gas station. I'm pretty sure we hop on a bus briefly before ending up on the train. It's a half-hour train ride back into town and during this time he runs into a friend. After an awkward non-introduction he spends the whole train ride talking to her while I sit there wishing I could disappear. Once off the train we all troop along to the hostel. Of course I can't even shake him there because he works there, so we walk together. 2. I have a story for this. So, full disclosure, there's no sex in the story. I was at a friend's house, couch hopping between cities, and we got very, very drunk trying to make butterbeer. At some point in the night, after redecorating the entire apartment with cheap streamers, we got in a stamp fight, during which my friend proceeded to rubber stamp dinosaurs all over both my arms, chest, and face. Well, the next morning I had to leave pretty early, as I was expected at my mom's house later that day. I rushed out, too hungover to shower or even glance at my reflection. At this point, I had forgotten about the dinosaurs. On my way, I thought, hey, I'm nearby, I'll swing by Kaiser and pick up my birth control prescription since it's been waiting for me for a while now. Walked in like there was no issue. Noticed some of the other people in line at the pharmacy counter staring at me, but I figure it must be because my hair and makeup are probably pretty rough at this point. Get my prescription. Decide to use the bathroom before my long drive to my mom's house. Well, I walk out of the stall and come face to face with my Dino-ed self. I'm not kidding. Green. Kids rubber stamp style dinosaurs all over. He even got one on my eyelid. I tried washing them off for about 10 minutes, but it didn't do any good, and I had to walk back past that line at the pharmacy counter, head held high, covered in dinosaur stamps. Sounds like a very fun night though. I was dating this girl early freshman year of high school and we were at her place when her parents were supposed to be out of town. She had this garage with a room above it that's about 50 feet from where I parked my car, all gravel in between. So her dad comes home without us noticing and figures out what's up. Unbeknownst to me, he takes my flip-flops. Later when I'm leaving, feeling pretty good about myself no less, I can't find my shoes. Think oh weird, proceed to start the very painful walk to my car. Then bam, floodlights from the main house. Think like a mini version of stadium lights. Blind me and I hear yeah keep walking you little crap. I see you, the mother sucker had stolen my shoes and turned on his motion activated floodlights he uses to scare away deer. Also he could taunt me and teach me the definition of a walk of shame. Honestly a great guy though. We had dinner with our parents a month later. Took me that long to be able to face him, and we laughed about it. But Jesus, first and last time I've done barefoot on gravel. In college, I went home with a guy I had a crush on. Bit on the way, slipped on a step and cut the crap out of my knee. I didn't notice until we got to his place that I was bleeding a lot. Drunk and me didn't let that stop me from getting some. The next morning, I didn't want to wear my heels with my injured knee, so I borrowed the guy's slip-on shoes, which made me look like I was wearing clown shoes. On my long walk across campus, there's a church by my apartment, and it happened to be Easter services and one of my professors saw me and stopped to chat. Mortifying. Oof. Got extremely intoxicated at my college basketball game and hit up my ex. Except I was dressed in a onishi. Woke up in his room. Think I'll catch the campus bus and just avoid eye contact with everyone. I go to look out the window and realize we were in the middle of a blizzard. So I had to walk in the freezing snow a half mile through campus. Horrible experience. A couple months ago my roommates and I went out to my favorite dive bar. I really enjoy this place, as it has cheap drinks and draws a decent crowd, but it's not too packed to have a conversation. The booze was flowing great. I noticed this older woman out on the dance floor who was behaving much too provocative for someone her age. Perfect. We were all getting pretty drunk and kind of poking fun about her. I remember asking her for a lighter when she went out for a cigarette. I remember her telling me she was 53. I remember doing jag bombs with her at last call. I don't remember leaving the bar. I woke up with no clothes on in a strange bedroom that I've never been in before. My head hurt like heck and my mouth was dry as the Sahara. Must have been a good night, I thought. This house was not silent. It wasn't bad noise. It sounded like breakfast being cooked downstairs. I could hear cartoons on the TV down there too. Then I came to the realization that there were kids in this house. I gotta get the heck out of here. I looked over on a dresser in the room and saw a picture frame of the chick from the bar and what looked like her husband. Oh, all I could think was frick. No fricking way. This fricking guy is gonna kill me. The husband was a biker looking mother who probably had guns. I didn't want to stick around to find out. I grabbed my clothes and ran to the bathroom and hopped out of the window and ran for a few blocks until I could figure out where the frick I was. It was about a 1.5 mile walk back to my house. I have no idea where the man in that picture was. I hope they weren't still together or anything, but frick man, still I might be a homewrecker. The worst part of it all is that I'm afraid to go back to my favorite bar out of fear of running into her or her husband. TLDR. Woke up in a cougar's bed. Found out she had children in the house and a potential husband. Ran the frick away. I think you're probably going to have to find a new bar. In bed. Had to pee. Went to toilet. Peed. This feels weird. Why are my pants wet? Wake up. Only dreamed of going to toilet. Peed my bed. Had to walk to the closet and change. My worst pee dream was after watching Revenge of the Sith as a kid. I dreamt about the classic I have the high ground Anakin scene, except the lava suddenly felt very warm and realistic and wake up, pee everywhere. This happened about 2 years ago and isn't the stereotypical walk of shame. I was working in a drug rehab for about 8 months as a primary therapist. The place was poorly run right from the rip, and I dreaded going to work every day despite loving my actual job. But it was money, and I had just started wedding planning, so I had expensive deposits. Anyway, it was October, which means the census was getting low. For those of you who don't know, inpatient rehab has a holiday drought, where the number of clients you have drops significantly. After all, no one wants to spend the holidays in rehab. So it's a Friday and I'm finishing out my weekly paperwork, excited to get home and play Mario Odyssey, which came out that day. I leave work, pick up the game, get home, and start playing. I get a call from human resources. I was fired, no reason given, but I knew why. Census dropped, money was tight, and I was the newest hire there. Now for the walk of shame. I had to go back into work on Monday to clear out my office. All the while, I had to face my former co-workers and listen to them feign concern and wishes to keep in touch. It was the patronizing that was the worst part of it all. TLDR. Got fired over the phone after business hours on a Friday. Had to go back into work long after everyone else knew I was fired and walk by all of them to clean out my office. Oh god. 15 years later and this one still makes my stomach flip with cringe when I think about it. It was 2004. I was a freshman in college, and my best friend roommate and I used to party at this same house every weekend because her boyfriend's cousin lived there and I was hooking up with a couple of the other guys who lived there. This house was far off campus, and our dorm was on the opposite side. So it was roughly a 20-25 minute walk from dorm to house. So after a party, I wake up around 5 AM on a couch downstairs with no one else around. I panicked. I thought for sure my roommate had left me at the house and went back to the dorm without me. I looked around the couch. I couldn't find my shoes, my purse, my phone, my wallet, or my keycard that I need to get into the dorm. But I thought my roommate obviously took all those things with her for safekeeping to make sure no one stole them while I was passed out. I figured she was probably worried about me, so I raced out the door, locking it behind me, like a good house guest does, and starting walking back to campus, disheveled, barefoot, and with no purse or phone. I'm about 15 minutes into the walk when the cold air starts to sober me up and I wonder what the frick I'm doing walking in the middle of campus at 5:30 AM barefoot. Everything starts to flood back to me. My roommate was upstairs staying with her boyfriend like she always does. My shoes were in the mudroom with everyone else's. My purse was in the bedroom upstairs where I always keep it during parties. Now I'm fricked because I can't get into my dorm without a keycard or a key to my room. I locked the door behind me at the house so I can't get back in and I don't have a phone so I can't call anyone. I chose to walk back to the house and bang on the door until I woke someone up and they let me back in. It was so freaking embarrassing that I couldn't even explain myself. Was on a business trip to do some late hours network changes at another location, then return back by train. Had to squat while connecting some cables in the rack. Rip. Yep, so much for the back seam of my pants, which meant that I had to do the whole return trip with my boxers peeking through the rip. Well, mine was a stride of pride that quickly turned into a walk of shame. Strutting my way home after spending the night with a girl that I'd been trying to woo for a while, I was feeling good. It was a nice day, sun was shining and it was only a mile walk so I was a happy man. With a couple of 100 meters to go, that's when things started to go wrong. The late night takeaway that I'd loved only hours previously reared its ugly head. With my apartment in sight and my belly making noises reminiscent of Jabba the Hutt feeding, I took off at a run, or a weird hybrid run waddle to get home. Just as I'm reaching the entrance to the apartment complex, the floodgates opened and the last 50 meters were some of the most shameful of my life as I climbed the stairs and got into the shower fully clothed and full of regret for that late night burger. There is a Bavarian saying that depicts literally that and means to miss by a small but crucial margin, yielding the whole endeavor fruitless. Vorder Turin die Hochschissen, something like crapping your pants at the door. Words. Not me, but at my college, 2 dorms were connected by the dining hall. The only way from one to the other was via the dining hall, or you could walk way around outside. Occasionally the disheveled, must-hair walking corpse of a freshman girl would half-trot through breakfast to get back to her room. On one occasion, applause broke out throughout the hall. That's when you own that crap and take a bow. Not mine but my mom's. My mom went to a festival with a dress code. Not completely sure what it was, but she was wearing a kind of skimpy Russian army uniform with a short skirt. My mom was 48 at the time, but she looks like she might be in her 30s. So she didn't look like an older lady wanting to look hot. She brought a fur jacket to go to and from the festival. At the festival she met a guy, went home with him, woke up and went out and called her friend to pick her up. So, my mom's standing outside in a skimpy dress with a fur coat by the supermarket in the center of Amsterdam waiting for her friend. He pulls up in his expensive car. He's quite rich, and my mom gets in. People are staring. Mom looked like a Russian prostitute getting picked up by her pimp. This happened to a good friend of mine. We go to a party at another college. He gets completely hammered and goes back to some girl's dorm room. They hook up. Afterwards, he has to pee. He goes out into the hall but can't find the bathroom. Ends up pee in the stairwell. Back into the hallway, but now he can't remember the girl's room number. He's not even sure he's on the right floor. It's about 3 AM. He's in an all-female dorm, and he's completely naked. He wanders around the building for at least half an hour until he finally comes across the laundry room. All he manages to find is a short denim skirt thing that is too big for him and a button-up short-sleeved shirt that's way too small. It's so small that he can't button it up. It's October in Pennsylvania, so it's cold. Not exactly you're going to die cold, but it was probably in the 40s or something. He proceeds to walk 2 miles back to the house we were staying at, barefoot, in a skirt, and wearing a shirt that looked more like an open vest. He said that he really didn't see that many people on the walk back, but 2 or 3 cars beeped at him. Fine, you got me. I broke down laughing at work. Went to the home of a girl from work for a hookup. Indian girl whose strict parents were gone for the day. We get down to business for a while. Then she happens to glance out the window and says, "How come there's a car in the driveway?" Just as she's saying that, her mom starts to open the door and the girl shoves me out her bedroom window. Her mom sees me fly out the window and screams. Outside, her dad comes after me while I'm trying to put my clothes back on. Tells me to come into the house and that he's not going to hurt me. Thief got my car keys and shoes, so I choose to believe him. He sits me down to have a discussion about the immorality of sex. Then his daughter comes out of her room still topless and starts trying to defend me. Dad starts screaming. Mom starts screaming. Girl starts screaming. I decide my work here is done and skulk out of the house. It was a short walk of shame. Just into and then out of the house. But holy crap, did I feel ashamed. That's unfortunate. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.